We're live.
Hello, everyone.
Mr. Andrew Cobenciaro.
What's going on, Chris?
It's crack-a-lackin'.
Not much.
We're just having a bit of a discussion surrounding, I think, we can probably start there today because I think it's a really important thing that everyone, these day and age knows about macros, this and protein, carbs, fats, calories, yet no one stops to think about the micronutrition that comes along with that.
100%.
Like if you, track into MyFitnessPal, we know that the diary is not going to be fantastically accurate. But we were just having a quick chat off air about Chronometer. And often I'll get clients to go through, and even if, I'd say it's not quite as user-friendly as MyFitnessPal is, but
in what way?
So I think that just when you're tracking, in the actual app itself, it just doesn't flow nicely to track with, like MyFitnessPal does. Just the way that the diary's set up as you enter the foods, it can kind of look a little bit jumbly. But the actual web version is really good. So often, what I'll get a lot of my, I suppose, more advanced guys and girls that have got, higher physique goals, I'll get them to go and just track a day of eating or so or two onto Chronometer. And then we can identify what deficiencies there are within their nutrition. So a lot of people will take supplements, I feel, with very little rationale behind why they're taking them, i.e. vitamin C and a multivitamin or multivitamin. So both of those two things, most people are not deficient in vitamin C, yet still supplement with vitamin C. So I think that where you can identify where these actual gaps are within your micronutrition is, I think Chronometer is a great app. And plus you can even use the free version to go through and get a majority of this stuff.
Oh, so this is a paid thing?
It's not paid, or you can go paid. They have paid gold and that sort of thing. Like MyFitnessPal is premium or whatever. But you can go on the free version. You just can't set out meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4. It's just kind of you can log all of your foods for the day.
That's what I do anyway.
Yeah. So
I've got
if you
two
eat
meals.
super basic, yeah. So if you eat super basic, then you can at least go through and you can see, oh shit, it gives you all of your nutrition scores for vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, immune support, antioxidants, bone health, metabolism support, fiber, iron, calcium, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on. And basically you can go through and see actually what you're deficient in, and then you can build your supplementation plan off of that. Obviously we probably know most people that come to us are going to probably be somewhat deficient in vitamin D, magnesium. They're probably the two main ones that typically crop up, and probably omega 6s and 3s are another two if people aren't consuming, fatty serves of fish or supplementing with fish oil. So looking beyond that.
Where do they get their data from, Chris? What if they're saying you're deficient in X, is that from your RD? Is that from the Australian RDIs? Is that American stuff? Is that functional numbers? What are we looking at here in terms of deficiencies?
So I think it's actually a Canadian-based software. But it's the difference between Chronometer and MyFitnessPal is the entire database with Chronometer is it's like a registered database, basically. So every food that's logged in there is come from a dietitian or something like that, or a nutritionist, or someone that actually has, the nutritional information is going to be correct per se. So, if you're searching for something how many times have you searched for, say, mushroom on MyFitnessPal, and you just get all this whacked out, or even the example I showed you of the olive oil, the green tick olive oil on MyFitnessPal. And, if someone was to actually use that, because how many people cook with olive oil, right? They're putting fucking 10 mils of olive oil on, they think it's only 2 calories. It's that's a green tick verified, input on MyFitness.
How does that get verified?
So I think having a verified database is so good. That's what I know. Who's verifying these green tick fucking options? Because that's retarded. If I could pull it up, but actually it's I think for olive oil, it's per 5 mils, it's 4.6 grams of fat. And the other one that I found on MyFitnessPal that was verified, or that was green tick verified, was only it was half of that or a quarter of that or something like that. So it just goes to show how many people will say that, tracking macros, counting calories doesn't work for them, but it's not actually the system doesn't work. It's just you're not applying it correctly. So you're not tracking accurately, because even if you think you are, you can be making mistakes in your inputs like that. And that can be throwing you off hundreds of calories at the end of a week. So
I think the verifications, the only way I can see that something like that getting verified is that the verifications work off once a certain amount of people have used that entry, they say, all right, this has got to be
like green tick verified.
a good entry. Like all these people are using this entry. You know,
Yeah.
10,000 people have
fucked.
now used it. Green ticket, which is.
I think that's why I like Chronometer, because you can't just you can create your own data, like your own database if you want, but it doesn't go to the like actual database, the searchable one. And that's why I like it, because you can't just input whatever you want, like MyFitnessPal, and then anyone can search for it and find your entry. It's like every entry's in there is verified. So at least, you know, if you're tracking chicken or you're tracking beef or you're tracking your vegetables, you know, you don't need to necessarily go to NutTab, create your own food library, because it's a verified database. Like a majority of it comes from like USADA and USADA, and there's a few other like registered databases there that you can like search through as well, which, you know, I think makes all the difference when, you know, if you're going to go to the effort of at least tracking, then at least it's going to be accurate. And then you also get the extras in terms of, you know, identifying what you're actually deficient in, and then you can build a supplementation plan off of that, not just, you know, shooting in the wind and taking a multivitamin because you think you need to be taking one, but, you know. So,
but what I'm asking is, for you, say, all right, when it says you're deficient in if it just, for instance, said you're deficient in magnesium, what is that, like, what number, where are they pulling that number that you should have? Like that, where are they getting that from? Because even that might be too low, especially in a population like yourself, who's an athlete and, you know, obviously would burn through more magnesium, B vitamins, things like that. Who is this app talking to? Is it talking to Gen Pop, or is it, where are they getting the levels
it's always going to be like, a bell curve of data. So it's going to be middle of the average, bell curve of the data for someone that is, let's just say, you know, for someone that's an athlete, they're always going to have a higher requirement of micronutrients. So say for myself, I know that going into tracking these numbers. So even if I am deficient in, say, like magnesium, I'm probably not going to go to 100%. I may go to 150 or 200 because I know as an athlete, I know as a hard resistance training athlete, bodybuilder, my requirements for oxidative stress, for one, are going to be way higher. So then I'm going to need a lot more in terms of my micronutrition in order to get that up. So where they're actually calculating this off would be middle of the road, bell curve, you know, 95 kilo male, height, weight, blah, blah, blah. All the other metrics that they originally would take that off. And then they will kind of reverse calculate it from there. So then you have to understand what kind of population group you're dealing with. So if it's an athlete, you're probably going to have to understand that, you know, you're probably going to need a little bit more in terms of like your micronutrition. So on those specific things, you can always increase those numbers if you need to. So that's just like the minimum, you know. So I just view those numbers as a minimum, and then I try and push past them to, like, you know, my zinc may be like 150, 200, because, you know, my zinc and magnesium are going to be quite depleted in terms of like weight training and stuff as well. So those are a couple of the examples I think that, you know, pretty much make up the way that they kind of view it. So, but I think it's really cool. Like, it's like great. A bougie version of MyFitnessPal, but it gives you a lot more rather than just like, you know, because you can have a client that maybe on the surface, like, yeah, they're losing weight and their body composition might be great, but they've got a fuck ton of inflammation going on in their body that you're not even trying to manage oxidative stress, because they're filling their macros with protein powder and Cocoa Pops.
Garbage,
you know. So, but yeah, they may be getting a body composition result, but doesn't necessarily mean their digestion is functioning optimally, that they don't have a ton of inflammation or oxidative stress in their body, that, you know, all of these things contributing. It's like a negative feedback loop. So the more that you can kind of look beyond the macros as well, not just, you know, just solely on the protein, carbs and fats, and the more you can look beyond there, I think the more you can better service your client, and the better the actual outcome will be, the better they will feel.
Better they'll feel,
skin
100%.
quality, organ health,
sleep.
So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's really good, man. And it's not like, I think it's something like you would use for a week, a month, or whatever. Like, because, you know, let's be honest, the foods you eat in a month are pretty much 90% of the foods that you'll ever eat for most of your life. You know what I mean? The basics. And then, yeah, like getting a good idea of like where you're landing with some of this stuff is very, very educational for like your own health, man. Like a lot of people probably, like, it's even like when you get people to track just macros, they're like, fuck, I didn't realize fucking that avocado has so much fat, or that piece of salmon is just like full of fat. So you'd have moments like that, but more on a micronutrient level,
Yeah.
where you'll start to see things. Yeah, interesting.
It's like a
And
two-pronged thing as well, because if they're in a big deficit and they're dieting, like they don't realize that obviously all of these micronutrient dense foods, you know, majority of what your diet should be, it should be plant centric, right? Vegetables, fruit, and then obviously you've got your lean meats and your protein sources in there as well. Your good, you know, monosaturated fat sources. All of those things should be, you know, within your nutrition plan. But majority of those, you know, fruits and vegetables are going to be high voluminous foods that are going to allow the client to actually stick to, you know, their diet. There's like a direct correlation between
100%.
like, you know, I suppose poor food choices and higher amounts of oxidative stress and those that can't actually stick to their diet. So, you know, negative levels of adherence, essentially. So the more that you can, you know, you're getting the benefit of all the micronutrition, you're getting the benefit of the increased levels of food volume, because, you know, how many blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, you know, can you eat? That's just the fruits, you know, without even going into your zucchinis, mushrooms. It's like, you know, you can fill out your diet with all of these things for under 1,000 calories, and it's going to add a ton of bulk and food volume. Plus, the vegetables are delicious to all of your meals. So you're going to be able to eat a lot of it. You're going to be covering a lot of your micronutrient needs, and you're going to stay fuller for longer. So once you realize that, you realize, like, I think one of the biggest things that, you know, when I first start working with someone that they got to wrap their head around is so many people are used to seeing like a big amount of food on the plate and they instantly get shocked at that, right? They're like, oh, that's so much food on a plate. Like, how do you eat all that? That must be like so many calories. But if you're filling out that plate with mushrooms, you know, leafy greens, a lean protein source, and then maybe like a starchy carbohydrate source like a potato, like, fuck,
or even
like
a
half the amount
pumpkin
of
or
calories
something
in
like
that. Or pumpkin as well. There's like a quarter of the calories in that than there would be in your Big Mac and fries.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it blows people's mind because they're used to seeing like big amounts of food with big amounts of calories.
Yeah.
When, you know, that it just isn't that way. And like, that is literally the dieting hack right there.
Interesting.
Is, you know, filling those micronutrient requirements. So I think it's
Definitely.
it's fucking,
So
most people just completely neglect that.
what did you find out? Do we know?
For myself?
Yeah.
Oh, because I've been doing this for like quite some time now. So usually when I build a diet, I'll build it on Chronometer and then I'll track into MyFitnessPal, just because I have such a well-built library already in MyFitnessPal. So for me, it's more so like probably some of the main heavy hitters that I'm deficient in would be omega-3 and omega-6s. Just because I don't really enjoy eating fish.
Yeah.
Or
I
any
would have
sort
thought
of fatty
omega-6s would be pretty common.
Not really. Most people, unless they're eating like a fatty serve of fish, are going to be deficient in omega-3s. Or most people don't even eat fish.
No, I'm saying omega-6. Isn't omega-6 in like a lot of things?
It's in both though. Fish, you've got omega-3 and omega-6s. So if you're not eating fish, like, you're probably going to struggle to hit that number. And that, then you can be like, okay, maybe I need to then supplement with some sort of fish oil.
Yeah.
And the good thing is you can actually even build out like a supplement plan there as well. So you can search like fish oil, and you can bring in the strength of the fish oil that you've got. So maybe fish oil, you know, you're having, I don't know, times 3 pills, which what are they dosed at usually? Like 100 milligrams?
It's close to, the triple strength ones are close to, they're around 800.
I was just thinking, because most people wouldn't know about the triple strength. So they
Single
probably
strength,
just have
you're looking at, 100. It's like,
a thousand, I think it is.
The tablet is 1,000 milligrams, but the EPA and DHA is like 100, maybe max 150.
Yeah, so you can punch them in, and it'll adjust all of your totals again. So you can see then, okay, then if I'm eating this, you know, this is my base diet that I'm eating, and I add this amount of fish oil, it'll bring me up to this amount, and I'll be covering my basis for the omega-3s, omega-6s, and then all of the other, you know, little things that would probably go missed there as well. Zinc, copper, you know, sodium, potassium, like all of those things. Even probably calcium's another one I think that a lot of people may be deficient in if they don't drink a ton of like dairy or don't eat a ton of dairy.
Yeah.
Or just little things like that. So, and I actually quite like, even when I'm building a diet, like probably over the last like 6 months now, I always build people's diets in Chronometer, and then I will transfer it across and give it to them via that. Yeah, because then at least that way, because you can obviously punch it in for whatever macronutrient targets that you want. You can build out your diet from there. And then that way I know that the client, even if they're on, let's just say they're in a heavy deficit and they're on 1,500 calories, it's a small female or something, they're on a low amount of food, I know that I can still build out their micronutrient requirements so they're still not deficient in anything. Whereas, you know, a lot of people, if you look at the fucking, just an influencer on Instagram and all they're eating is like 2 strawberries on top of like a bowl of oats. And then next thing they've got like rice cakes and peanut butter. Like, they're so deficient in micronutrition, and a lot of people will see that and think, oh man, like this is the way to eat. Like this influencer, look how good she looks. I must have to eat like this. But they don't realize how deficient these influencers are and how much damage they're actually doing to the industry from sharing shit like that, because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
No, they don't. And the thing is that they don't look good because of the diet. They look good despite the diet that they're on. Like,
it's like your genetics as well.
You're looking at the top 1% of genetics in like the world, bro. It's just like, yeah, it's so funny when people, it's like this thing with, I was discussing with you this week with people who go and get trained by pros. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like this, most bodybuilding pros, like I would say a lot of them don't know shit. They don't know how many actual,
answer me this question, right? How many IFBB pros do you actually think are good coaches that have coached other people to IFBB pro cards? How many?
I'm just trying to think if there's any. Are we talking in Australia?
Let's just throw it worldwide. You're probably looking at like 1% of the people that are pros are actually a decent coach. Usually what you'll find, or let's just say they're active, right? They may be a pro in the past. And obviously they can get results with them despite what they're doing. So like the likes of like, you know, the gurus, I suppose, like, you know, Hani Rambod, or even Hani, he's not like a
pro. I don't think he was a pro though. No, I think he was an amateur bodybuilder. Yeah.
Yeah. So like a lot of those guys, like they're just getting results in spite of what they're doing. Like just because someone's like an IFBB pro, I guarantee that their coach is probably not an IFBB pro, you know?
Yeah. I think where it comes is like, obviously, if you have great genetics, you can pretty much do anything and get a result. So then people obviously see how good your results are and want to be trained by you. But
and that's the problem.
They don't realize that you don't have any, like, you think you have an idea because you think for yourself, look what I've done for myself, right? But then you should always be digging into this. Like, if you're looking for a coach, you should always be digging into like their clients. Are their clients getting results? Shit like that. But also, I think the less genetic, you know, the people with worse genetics often are the best
Cliff
coaches.
Wilson, for example, right? Yeah, people that are not genetically gifted because they know what literally doesn't work. Because the shit like that isn't like what is actually going to work, won't work for them. It'll literally do nothing.
They've tried probably that many things as well. Like someone like that, like Cliff Wilson, or, you know, there's heaps of great coaches that probably don't have the best genetics and they focus on training other people rather than, you know, excelling themselves, because it's going to be a hard slog. Are fucking awesome coaches because, like, with themselves and with their clients, they've experimented and they've just got more like experience, man. Basically, that if you have great genetics, you do one thing, it works very well on you, and you don't really learn anything after that, because that's the only thing that's got you results. You know what I mean? So when we're looking at
it's a problem, man. If it's like when you see a guy in the gym, right? He's got a fucking great set of biceps, and you go up to him and you say, "Bro, how did you get those biceps?" And he's like, "Oh, I do this weird curl on this weird angle." Like, no, this guy had fantastic biceps because he is genetically gifted for that body part.
Yeah.
You know, like people will lot, because I would like, for me, like my legs are quite, you know, a genetically strong point, especially my calves. People will come up to me all the time and say, "Bro, like, what do you do for calves? How do you get those calves?" Bro, I train calves like once every 2 months. You know, so don't be following what I do. You want to go to the guy who had shit calves and made good progress on his calves.
Yeah.
And then that's the guy that you want to see, right? Or had a shit chest, and then ask him, "How did you build your chest?" You don't want to go to the guy that always had great chest, or always had a great arms, or always, you know, had a fantastic physique, because they don't know fucking shit. I can promise you that.
Fucking oath, bro. Bro, I've been loving the full body training. I'm on week 2 of this new block.
Experiment.
Oh, dude, I love it. I've done it before, like probably 2 years ago, maybe a bit longer, maybe 3 years ago. I'm feeling so strong, bro.
What do you think, like so far with your experience with it? Positives, negatives?
Negative, it does take a little bit longer. I could shorten it, but I'm enjoying it so much that it is taking a little bit longer. Like I could shorten the amount of stuff that I'm doing, but like I'm actually.
And what are you running like with your split at the moment? Like what does your setup look like? Like what do you? Let's just say you've got like maybe a bench focused full body session. Like what is your setup?
So what I'll do is I've got a squat focus session. So squat focus one day is squat focused. So my opening movement is squats. I've been squatting twice a week as well in this block, barbell squatting. So one day is squat focused, one day is bench focused, one day is like a row focused. Dave will be on in 2 minutes. One day is like a row focus, and one day will be like more shoulder focus. So that'll just be like the priority for the session. So like my main kind of like prime movements. And then like I'll work pretty much everything into the session. The only thing I would want to get a little bit more volume on, which I can, like I'm tweaking as the week's going, I'm kind of like tweaking the program a little bit to make it a little bit better. But I've noticed I haven't really been doing it. I've been doing one day for arms where I open up with arms. But I probably, other than that, I'm not getting enough arm training in. So I'm going to just add a little bit more in somewhere in the next week, just find a spot for it. But the downside is it's taking me a bit longer, but it's taking me a bit longer because I'm finding that I'm able to do more volume.
Would you notice that your performance across the board is just like skyrocketing?
Whereas like if I was doing even an upper lower or a push pull legs or whatever split, I would get to an hour and I'd feel quite fatigued. Once I get to the hour mark of doing this and probably have done the same amount of volume, because it's, I guess, spread across different body parts, I'm still feel good to do another exercise, or do you know what I mean? So today I finished off with really pretty heavy lat pull downs, and like I felt like it was my first set, like the start of the session. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, very, very, I'm loving it. And I'm feeling like I'm recovering well. And I got a bit more, I don't know, I just feel like I got a bit more pep in my step when I train. So I don't know.
And something I've experimented obviously with full body as well. And something I loved about it was the fact that you don't ever have to commit to a full leg day.
That's so
like,
for
good, example,
man.
where you ebb and flow with your training over the years. You'll go through periods where, maybe you're not bodybuilding that seriously and you just can't mentally commit to like a fucking squat pattern, a hinge pattern, an extension curl. And that's such a systemically demanding day. And then even the days following after that, you're just completely fried. Like your central nervous system's just bent. So it's so easy to come in and commit to, okay, I've just got a squat. And then I can move into a pushing movement, a horizontal push, a horizontal pull, vertical push, whatever. And then you can move on, that's one of the, massive positives I think is really cool about it.
And for me as well, like when I was training like more for men's physique stuff, my leg training was kind of on the back burner a little bit. Like I would train, but it would be minimal volume. And when you
that's actually really good, like specialization there for men's physique, that's good.
Yeah, when you start doing that, then you kind of like, I don't know, you start your conditioning in terms of like being able to do legs gets worse, I guess, because you're not doing it as much. Also, my mobility got quite worse as well in the lower body. And then since doing this, I haven't really been like, I've got no plans to compete or anything like that. So I've been doing this block with full body, and dude, I'm addicted to doing the leg part of it now. Like every day I just want to squat, or every day I just love it, bro. And I'm seeing the progress on a weekly basis, and it's really got me back into lower body training. Like I fucking love it, dude. Like I'm squatting tomorrow morning, and it's just I can't wait. Me and Luke are going to do a squat session. Woo! What's going on?
Big Dave. Has he got sound? He hasn't connected the audio.
Yeah, connecting, or it's connecting now.
So just for the listeners, we've got we've got Mr. David Knight himself coming on to join us for the podcast today. So Dave is, what are we now? 10, 11 weeks out from show number 1, if you can hear us. So he's competing in the IFBB as well.
Can you hurry up, bro? It says it's connecting.
Connecting to audio.
Let me see.
So I suppose we can keep yammering on
Thing
as well.
did not connect audio.
Well,
yeah. So So back to the full body. So yeah, it's one thing. It's got me so much more pumped to do lower body training, and just all like hard compound movements. So I've been loving it, and I think like because of that, I've been able to build a lot more strength. Even just in the last 2 weeks, I've been able to build a lot more strength. And yeah, that's like I feel fucking awesome, dude. So looking forward to the next like 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I think a key for the listeners there, because they may take away that and think, oh fuck, they're going to go in and they're going to do full body and they're going to do bench, squat, a deadlift pattern every single day. So when we're referring to full body,
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
We're not referring to that. It may be like on that first day, if it's like a heavy squat day, it may just be squats, but then you may do like a leg curl on the next day.
Yep.
You know, so, and that will be that'll be the hamstring dominant movement for that day. And then the next day, maybe like an extension, and then you might move into a hinge, you know? So it's more so just about splitting up your volume so it's less systemically demanding for that individual over the course of that 7-day period.
What's wrong with this bloke? Can you hear us? Not if you can hear us.
Can we pause? We should be able to pause.
We can pause. If I press this pause button, what happens?
I don't know. Should be able to pause. I think you can pause.
Oh, he's gone. Anyway, yeah. So that's been really good. Yeah, but with what you were saying, yeah, like I'm not. I want to do compounds every day because I feel like I can, but I'm not. And it's with any body part. That's how it is. Like I'll do, like say for chest, for instance, one day will be benching, and that will be my first exercise, which maybe I'll have longer rests and focus a bit more on progressing my strength. Then the next 2 days later, I might do like an incline a dumbbell press or a flat dumbbell press. But then later in the week, I might do flies or isolation stuff that will contribute to volume, but won't be.
Yeah. So it's not like compound. It's like splitting it up nicely there. So it's like technically it'd be like if you had like a chest session or a push session, and you started with maybe like an incline barbell. You had some sort of fly, and then you had some sort of pec deck, or maybe a flat press. You're just basically splitting all of that volume and, you know, like putting it all the way across like a 5 to 6 day split. So it theoretically is allowing you to have like a greater performance because you're more recovered going into each session. Because, you know, if you're doing like a push session, for example, and, you know, by the time you get to like those flies, maybe your chest is already fucked, you know?
Yeah.
And your performance is way worse. So that kind of allows you to split that volume up a little bit more effectively. And, you know, technically the total volume and tonnage lifted across the course of the week would be higher. So, you know, you probably will get a better growth response from that higher frequency.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, so far, so good. I also think like the change is good as well. Like with any program,
the novelty,
the novelty stimulus. Yeah. I'm very big on that with my periodization. Like I will periodize through like, you know, I'll do bro splits. I'll do, you know, upper lowers or push pull legs. And then every now and then I'll do like something like this, like a full body, something a bit more out there. And I always get such a good response like from that novel stimulus. I love it, man.
I think that's the key, right? So like, because too many people view like training in terms of like, what can I do in the next 4 to 6 weeks, rather than like, what's going to keep me training for the next 6 years? Yeah. You know, like, because again, if you're training and you're trying to make like a improvement to your lifestyle, improvement to your health, like you can't be looking at this from like, you know, what can I do in the next 20 weeks or even the next 16 weeks? It needs to be like, what can I do that's going to keep me training for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? Like, you know, anyone can train hard for 6 months and then you just fall off the bandwagon, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what's going to keep you coming back to the gym again and again and again and again, and doing this, I suppose, can be relatively monotonous, what we have to do in order to make progress. Like, not everyone obviously has the same, I suppose, physique orientated goals. So maybe they only need to train 3 days a week, but they still need to train 3 days a week, at the end of the day. So you need to make sure that you're making that some sort of stimulus novel, because even like, you may not necessarily need like that novelty in terms of stimulus for your body, but psychologically, that novel stimulus of like changing an exercise or changing your program or changing like your split setup could really like push you into like the next level.
I'll just press pause 1 sec.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we
Guys.
have finally Mr. David Knight has joined us on the podcast.
Hey guys, can I just tell you, I first met Dave we were both working at Genesis in Camberwell. Can you hear me, Dave? Is your sound working?
Yeah.
Okay. I first met Dave, Genesis in Camberwell. We were both working there. You started working a little bit after me. Oh my God.
Yeah, I was at 19, I think.
Yeah, we had the biggest laughs
Yeah.
ever. Like,
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
And then what? When did you end up leaving there? Like, were you there for a couple of years? You reckon?
No, about a year, I reckon. That was it.
And then I didn't see Dave after that for a few years. Always wondered whatever fucking happened to this kid, because we used to get along so well and have fucking sick time. And then he comes out of nowhere and
that's it, baby.
He inquired about prepping like a couple of years ago. We haven't had a successful prep yet, but he's been working with us now for how long?
I reckon close to 2 years now, I reckon.
2 years, yeah. So
at least. Yeah.
Couple of failed preps.
Well, not failed from his perspective.
Not failed from his perspective. Failed from
the
the COVID outbreak, but we got close a couple of times. Now 10 weeks out.
How you feeling?
Yeah, how are you feeling?
Feeling good. It's just this COVID thing that's messing around a little bit now, this time with the new, whatever the hell it is, the Omicron or something. But apart from that, I think every time I've gone into a prep, it's been easier on my body and my mindset, because obviously both of you have taught me a lot, but I think the body's just got more acclimatized each time to prepping, that it's now used to being in a deficit each time. And I think this time we never really pushed the calories up that high, did we? We kind of kept it fairly low-ish, and the weight never went that high. So there was no real big dip from, say, 5K calories to 3K calories. I think the max we pushed it to was 3.6. So to drop that down
to lose, wasn't as much body fat to lose this time.
How's your body weight now? Where are you sitting?
91,
well,
91. He doesn't come back here to lose 91.
76. No, I think it's about 92-ish. Yeah, 91, 92, I think.
We're getting down now. We're getting down. Yeah.
Off camera, something different.
Bro, I've never met anyone with a bigger case of selective COVID from this guy. Some days he's got it, some days he doesn't. It just depends if it's good for him.
If it works for me, I've got it. You know what I'm saying?
One day he's like, he comes into the gym, I'm all clear, bro. Rapid
That's
test.
it, baby. That's
Walks
it.
out the door, I got COVID.
Yeah. Well, maybe I caught it from you guys. That's how it works. That's it, baby.
Oh, let's go.
Well, you're on the mend now, though. You feeling good?
Just lethargic. So all my other side effects are gone, but just staying awake is such a pain in the ass right now. So just trying to get through that. But yeah, apart from that, I feel fine. But just
Dude, I think you've caught it at the perfect time, to be honest.
I think if we're having it now, I've been saying 6-7 weeks time, critical time. And the training hasn't been affected that much. It's not just the food.
I can't.
The mic's just cut out again.
Talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, say that again.
I was just going to say, it's just more the food. So the training intensity's been a little bit off, but the food's just been dropped heaps. So the protein stuff's still there, but the carbs are just almost halved. So I guess, which is okay, but
yeah,
I think, yeah, it has like a lead-on effect where my energy's down because I'm sickish, and then my energy's down because I'm not consuming enough calories. So it's kind of like a catch-22, but you know,
Is
is
it
what it
coming
is, I
back
guess.
now?
I think
The
yesterday was a better day, but it still wasn't where it's supposed to be. But the protein's always there. So the only thing I'm losing is the carbs. But again, it's more just an energy thing right now. But apart from that, it's fine.
And now you're going
Excited to actually finally make it to the stage first. The first time.
Don't jinx me. You got,
Are you excited?
5th times, 100%. Yeah,
charm,
no.
baby.
5th times a charm. I'm just
I
excited to
feel
see
like
what.
you guys are similar weights at the moment, right?
I am 94.
94. Yeah, you're quite similar. Interesting.
Yeah. So I've just started to hit that point now where it's like starting to stick a little bit more. So it's but also too, like it's, I don't know, kind of comparative to where we were finishing up at the end of last prep, where like I suppose I was probably about 91, 92. Like I probably reckon I'm in a similar condition now at 94. So I think I made, like in that intermission period there, I made quite a bit of progress. So I'm keen to see. You know, I thought my weight would have dropped a bit faster than what it has now. Like it dropped quick initially, and then like now it's just started to slow down a bit. So I think this 94 barrier now, they've just broken the 94s. Like it's just going to start to slow down a little bit more. So I still think, like inside out peeled, I'll need to be at least 87, 88. I still think that's probably the realistic goal. But I'm still like feeling pretty decent. This is the first week that I really have been like, you know, dragging a little bit, where I've been like fucking feeling it. So
has your weight dropped from the adjustments that you guys made?
Well, so this literally only been 1 day so far, but
Okay.
we pretty much, well, Dean just wanted to switch around the, so based on my carbs before were at 300. Now he's, you know, pulled them to about 150, but pushed my fats up to 100.
He's got more fat.
We're just trying to get a little bit of natural diuresis going on, like towards the back end of this mesocycle before we deload, rinse off fatigue, and then refeed, diet break, and then fill back up again. So I should be feeling pretty good after that. I just got to get through. Like yesterday was a bit rough, but getting through, I feel like once you like, it's actually not that bad, because like the higher fat like keeps you satiated, because the protein's higher as well. So the higher fat, higher protein keeps me satiated. It's just the lack of energy throughout the day, but I'm not overly that hungry, so my appetite's still sweet.
Yeah. What's the protein at?
We pushed that up to 280 from 260. So literally no change to the actual calories. Like it's about 26, 27. And literally I've been rinsing that out now I dieted all through Christmas. I didn't have any refeeds. I didn't have anything. So I pretty much just pushed all the way through. And then, like that's the only change we've made now. And then I think we'll have, like, following next week, after we've deloaded and we've probably have 3 or 4 days of refeeding, I think we'll start to dip back down again and start our like another push in again. So I still think that we're probably on track to be ready, like I reckon 4 or 5 weeks out. I think that'll probably be likely where we're at, and then at least then we have a bit of time towards the back end to, you know, manipulate certain variables if we need to I suppose fill out a little bit more, or, you know, toy with some, you know, peaking protocols or whatever we need to do towards the back end. But it's probably the best and the most confident I've actually felt going into a prep. I mean, even during the last prep, like just like, I don't know, especially I was feeling, actually it's quite similar, because I obviously have competed before, and like Dave, so I think doing the back-to-back preps, like this one has been probably the easiest so far, which is weird, because this is like the first attempt obviously got canceled because of COVID, second attempt canceled because of COVID, this third attempt, like it's just kind of just been cruisy like this entire way through. I haven't really felt like shit until now, like whereas before, like comparatively, I probably felt, you know, as bad as I do now, probably like 14 weeks out. Now it's like, you know, 12 or even 11 weeks out now, and I'm still feel like I got a full tank of gas to give.
And you're just doing classic, yeah?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna do classic.
Those vacuums, baby.
The vacuums, baby. So yeah, literally for me, the focus is going to be on at VIX. Will be technically, it's weird because like I feel weird doing it, but technically I'm a first timer in the IFBB. So I'm gonna do first timer, classic, novice, and obviously open as well. And then with FitFest, it'll obviously depend, you know, how things go, whether or not I can actually do novice at FitFest or not. But that's the plan, is just to do classic. So I think I contemplated doing bodybuilding in the under 90s as well, but I just don't know how I feel about the judges getting a look at me before, like, because obviously I want classic to be my main division, because I feel like that's what my physique's better suited to with my flow, my lines, my posing. I think it'll be much more suited to classic. So I don't want to come out in bodybuilding, them see me in bodybuilding, see me as a bodybuilder, and then come out in classic and be like, hey, wasn't it that fucking guy from bodybuilding just before? And then, you know, I'd rather them just see me in classic and go from there.
That was my thing with Black Terminator, bro, when they wanted him to do classic as well. Like, fuck that.
Yeah, no. Because as soon as you see, like, even if they don't like think that way, like you can't help it. It's a bias because you've seen this person before. So, and Dave, were you just doing the bodybuilding out of the 90s?
Who knows? I'm just like an awkward. I'm like 4'3", and then not. I don't know, self-doubt, I guess. But I'm like too small for classic, and then I'm like not big enough. As in, like too small height-wise for classic, I think, and they're not big enough for bodybuilding.
So basically, you're too big. You're too big for classic because of your height.
No, I'm just too. I'm 3'7" at most. Do you know what I mean?
You would struggle to make the weight cap, right? Because of your height. So you're too big for classic.
Well, how much taller are you, Chris?
I'm about 180, 179.
And what are you, Dave?
181. No, like 174. 174.
It's fucked. Honestly, it's actually fucked. Like, so because I was talking to Dean about this, right? So we're talking about the classic weight cutoffs. Because I'm 179, it puts me smack bang in the middle of class C. If I was 175 or below, I would have to weigh 6 kilos less. So because I'm like 4 centimeters taller, I get 6 kilos of stage weight.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but you also gone up against 6 kilos extra big boys there as well. That's a difference.
Yeah.
That's a crazy jump though for like 4 centimeters. Though. It's like this much.
It's nuts. Yeah, it's nuts. But they got to cut it off at some point. Do you know what I mean? So where's it going to be? You're just unlucky to fall.
I think it should be like closer together if you're going to do that. Like,
but you're
like 4 centimeters is like crazy.
So you're in the prime. Yeah. You're the prime height. You're like the max, the shortest you can be, and the heaviest in that kind of like cutoff area.
Yeah,
very advantageous. I like that. Yeah, and Dave, you'd have to be what? What did we say? Dave would have to go to 86 or 86?
So he would have to be 86. Yeah, he's gonna have to be 86 because he's what are you 174? Did you say?
Yeah.
So you're about 86 point something, 86.5 or something.
But that would mean a cut to like 83, 84, which is like 9 kilos out now. And then I'd have to get back up to 86, 87. Like, it's just not going to happen. Do you know what I mean? I'll be sacrificing way too much. I'm just keen to get out there and have some fun. I don't care what happens, where I place, as long as I've done the best. As long as I get to the day and I'm like, there's literally not a day that went by where I didn't nail it. Do you know what I mean? And if the protocol, if something didn't suit me, then I'm okay with that because I nailed A to Z. But if we're like, oh, cool, we should have switched up B to C, then that's fine. But as long as I get to that day and I did my cardio, wore my waist trainer, stuck to my cals, didn't binge, at 5th time, I'm just happy to get up there, to be honest. Just see what happens.
Bro, that's what I was saying to Andy, man, because it's like with when you're prepping and stuff, like you can't control who shows up on the day, right? So literally the only thing that's within your control is what you can do from now until show day. And if you can honestly say that you've ticked every single box every single day along the way, and like you're genuinely happy with the physique you're presenting on stage, like whether you win or not is regardless because you've won because there's not much more you could have done. Like control fucking comes out of nowhere. You know?
Yeah.
I feel like your mindset has changed a lot on that topic though, compared to like 2 years ago. Yeah.
What was my mindset 2 years ago?
Used to be very like another level competitive. Like you wouldn't even.
I still want to win.
I know you still want to win.
And if I don't, I'll still be disappointed.
I'll
still be disappointed.
But you used to be a little bit more not accepting of the fact that you don't anyone can be there. Like you were like, I need to win, otherwise that's it. Like,
I still feel that way. Feel that way, but I'm saying that in the context of like I'm going in with that mindset, but at the same time, like you have to be okay with that because you just don't know who's going to show up on the day. Like that's not within my control. Like I'm very much that way inclined with things that are within my control. So like if I've done everything that I can do, then I basically have still done that. Yeah. It's just kind of like, I suppose shifting the perspective of like, because like what happens if I lose? What am I going to do? Fucking quit bodybuilding forever? Like
for me, it's what? Sorry.
There you go.
I was going to say, for me, it's one of those sports. Like, don't get me wrong, things can go wrong on the day. Like, but I've done a lot of sports where you can bust your everything 24/7, get to the day and still have a crap day. So even if you're the one who's put the most work in all year round, and then you get to that day, say it's, I used to do Muay Thai, I used to do football, I used to do athletics. If you have a crap day on that day, you still may have been the hardest worker for the past 12 months, but you can still have a crap day. Whereas, and I don't know, obviously you both know more than I do, but I feel like once you get on stage, it just reflects the work you've put in. Like, okay, yeah, so you can come in bloated or not as full or X, Y, Z, but if you practice your posing, I don't feel like there's a whole lot you can do to stuff that up, if that makes any sense at all. So I feel like it's one of the sports where as long as you put the work in, that'll be representative on the day. Do you know what I mean? Again, I don't know. You know more than I do, but I just feel like
the other variable I guess you're dealing with is what other people like. You could do fucking brilliantly, not miss a beat for the last 12 months. But if fucking Ronnie Coleman's brother turns up to the show and he's in your fucking weight class,
but you get beat, do you know what I mean? That's all it is. He
may have only done 80% of what he should be doing.
Yeah.
It's just the game. It's just the way it goes. You know what I mean?
But imagine like a Suffer Powell or something.
Yeah.
You know he's going to win. Then he comes up on the day and then has a bad start. Yeah. It's like he should have won, but he just had a bad start, and that put him 1 or 2 seconds behind. But he should have won. So if someone comes along who's 10 times your size, we'll be like, well, there's not much I could have done anyway. I mean, no matter how hard I worked, this is the best version of me, and this is what you're getting at the end of the day. So if it doesn't work, trial and error for next time. But I feel like it's one of those sports is if you get to that day, you're like, you know what, I ticked all the boxes, the hard work's done now. I just got to kind of present my best case kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
No idea, because it's just such a hard lineup, like without seeing them all next to each other, because it's been so long as well since, like, I don't even remember I don't know if any of these guys even stood next to each other before.
I reckon Fabrizio is going to decimate people.
Yeah, such a nice shape. Did you see Fabrizio, Dave?
Do you know who Fabrizio is?
I have no idea who you're talking about, to be honest. I know me. That's about it. That's all I really care about, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, like I love bodybuilding and stuff, but I just like people like, oh, have you seen X, Y, and Z? Or I'm like, nope. Do you follow, this person on? Nope. I don't know. I appreciate the physique, but I don't know.
Honestly, dude, I actually don't mind that, because like a lot of people are like that, like where like they just bodybuild themselves, but like they're not like that much involved in it, that like they don't know who all the pros are, they don't know who they're competing against. And I actually think that's a good tool to have, like in terms of like your mindset, because if you don't know nor care who you're competing against, you're not going to be like fucking up late at night searching through Instagram, looking at this dude thinking, fuck, this guy looks better than me. I actually think it's a good thing to be a little bit removed from it. This is Fabrizio though. He won.
Jeebus.
And that's a pro physique right there.
It's fucking crazy, man. Seriously.
Yeah, that's nuts. He looks good. I wonder how much he weighs there.
I don't reckon he weighs that much, man. It's just such his whole physique is just a fucking illusion, bro. It's just like
damn genetics.
Yeah, I don't think his legs are like huge, so like it's just all.
I can't find a photo of his back, but
man, I just remember watching him stand there at the Vix, and his arms just fucking balloon.
Yeah,
he's the guy, like he doesn't even need to like stand in a way that like accentuates his like, with a lot of guys, they really like open up their back. When he poses, he's just so relaxed. And his arms are just like by his side, basically. So
dude, it's fucked up.
Next level. So I don't know. I can't see. I mean, who? Let's have a look.
Like to me, bro. Like you look at this dude and you think he could be standing next to the likes of fucking who won the Olympia last year? Again, Brandon Hendrickson. Did Brandon win last year? I didn't really follow the men's physique much last year in the Olympia. Well, the top guys, Ryan Terry, Brandon Hendrickson, those guys.
Then you got Big Ali.
How tall is this guy?
I actually don't know, to be honest.
It's a big boy.
He's a big boy. Let me find a.
Just their waist is tiny.
Pretty thick.
Yeah, I think he's got
back
Fabrizio
as
for the
well.
back.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just trying to remember Fabrizio's back because he doesn't have many photos.
He's so mesmerizing through the shoulders and arms that it's like you don't really look at the back and think, oh fuck, his back's a standout body part, but it probably is.
Yeah, I think like last year, Pat had him on the rear shots. Maybe would have had him on the rear shots. Never went up against him actually because of the way it was kind of 20. Let me just check this. Keep going. Keep talking, guys. 1 sec. Yeah. So I don't know. Like when you're judging. Oh, here we go.
Does he coach Fabrizio? That'd be kind of be weird, right? Like,
I think I don't know if he coaches him for posing or he coaches him like he coaches him. But okay, like this guy, Ali has more muscle, but whose physique are you looking at on a stage more?
For me personally, I think Fabrizio, right?
The flow is just so good, man. Like
he looks like he could stand on the Olympia stage. Like this guy's fantastic as well.
Oh yeah, he's fucking ridiculous, bro. Like, don't take nothing away from him. He's thick, he's dense. But Fabrizio is just like pretty. You know what I mean? Like that pretty. Like you just the attention will be on him. Let's have a look at LaQuinton as well. This guy wants
we might save the girls for next episode.
He's turned his account on private, bro. Oh,
he's gone. He's in that phase of prep where he's gone weird.
No. I'm following it. I need to change my go to my personal.
Where does that happen for you, Dave? When do you feel like you go a bit funny in prep?
What do you mean?
Like, I don't know. You start to, I suppose, lose it a little bit mentally.
Oh, I don't know, man. Like, honestly, I think the advice that you and Andrew gave me last time was a game changer for me. So you both, one of the massive things that changed a mindset was when you both said, yeah, like it's tough, but your body's never going to look this way before. Do you know what I mean? So pros and cons. And I think that's something that really stuck with me in terms of, okay, yeah, it sucks, but your body never gets to this. Your body's never going to look as good or as lean as it is now. So like enjoy that process. And that think what did we get to last time was 4 or 6 weeks out, and the time before that was 2 weeks out. I think 4 weeks out, and I was coasting through 2,700 calories. I mean, it's obviously not that low, but I felt fantastic. So the closest I've ever been is 2 weeks out. So I guess I don't know what it's like peak week, but I think maybe that last, I don't know, each time it's just gotten easier. So last time, 4 weeks out, 5 weeks out, I was absolutely fine. So I guess we'll wait and see what it's like this time, a week or 2 out. But just what you guys said last time in terms of just enjoy the process, and that really stuck with me. So, and I think one of the massive things was I didn't change anything, and I haven't changed anything for like 12 months. So the stuff I was doing 12 months ago, I'm still doing. So to take away anything from you right now is not that hard. Like I'm not, it hasn't been that much of a change for me. So I think the process is going to be easier. But again, these are things that you guys told me. So it's fantastic.
Really, I think helps to have that, like building that confidence, like confidence in the process, because you've been here, you've done this before, you know what you need to do in order to kind of get proper peeled, because, well, you've nearly been there how many times, right? Like we're so close, like a couple of times there, that we know that this time you're going to be able to get there, like it's not, I don't think it's an if or but. I think this will be the time that we really start to nail it for you.
I'll get up there with one leg and one arm after.
Be out posing on the fucking street in front of Strengthlab if you have to.
Dude,
if they're like, you don't make the weight, I'm getting up there.
It's gonna be sick, bro. I'm actually so pumped. I'm pumped both for the pro show and
We've also got Emma as well. Your
Emma.
lovely girlfriend.
So bikini's gonna be sick.
How are you feeling? Are you nervous? How are you feeling? Because obviously you've got Dave, you've got Emma. You've got me there as well. It's going to be an interesting thing for you.
I get a little bit nervous, just to more the pressure to make sure I get everything correct. I'm always questioning everything that I do. Like I'll analyze everything that I do to the nth degree. And I pretty much speak to Chris, you know, especially in the last weeks, about everything I pretty much do, just to like have someone to talk it over with. Because a lot of the times if I just leave it on my own, like I sometimes I'll make a decision and then I'll be like, fuck, should I have made that decision? Blah, 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 and just keep going back and forth in my own head. So it's good to have Chris as well, just to, you know, speak to him and say like, and he usually backs up what I say anyway. It's more my head, you know what I mean? Because I get, it's not that I'm making wrong decisions, I'm making right decisions, but because I'm so, I want to get it right so badly, sometimes I doubt those decisions just like, because, you know what I mean? So I just got to like a lot of the time I just got to remind myself that I have a lot of experience. Like this is not the first time I've done this or anything, but it's even like with amateurs. Like I always want to know how I can improve. And when I make a decision, I want to be 100% that that's the best decision that I could have made, especially like when you're leading up to a show. So in that way, I do get a bit nervous, but at the end of the day, like I've never really made wrong decisions. So I just gotta have a little bit more confidence in what I'm doing, I think.
I think that's what makes like a good coach as well, because if you can literally sit there and you can say, you know, without any uncertainty that like this is the protocol that I'm going to go with, and you have never questioned or doubted it, like you're probably a good coach, because you'd lack the ability to actually see other methods of like peaking, other methods of like, you know, because it all depends on the psychology of the client as well. Like there's so many factors that play into it that it's not just like, this is what's optimal on paper. It's, you know, you have to take so many other factors into account. And if you're not factoring in all these other things for the client, and, you know, you're not second guessing yourself every now and again, like if you're just confident in every decision that you're making, like how do you improve and get better as a coach?
Exactly. And that's my main thing, bro. Like that's like my main thing is I never like, my motto always with myself in anything I do is I'm always the student. Like I could be the smartest person in the room with whatever topic. And if you didn't know me and you spoke to me, you would think I know nothing, because I will just suck everything. Like I will be asking you the questions. Like I'll be the expert, you'll be the amateur, but I will still be asking you all the questions, because I always try to go into every situation to try to learn something. And I always feel like the person who thinks they know everything no longer learns anything anymore. Do you know what I mean? So no matter who the person is, and even if they've done zero in their fucking life, I feel like, what's the point of me going in there and saying, you know, this is how you do it, this is the only way to do it, blah, blah, blah. There's something to learn from everyone kind of. So I don't really have that thing where I need to be or feel like I know the most. Do you know what I mean? I hate that. I actually hate that. I don't have that. I don't want that, man, because that's exactly when people stop sharing stuff with you, one, and two, you just stop learning. You just get out of that student mentality. And I reckon like you should always be in that student mentality if you want to get better. You have to act on it. Like a lot of people in life, they're always like learning, but they never use what they learn. Like, you know how you've met these people who just are always learning.
They hide behind the books, bro. They're hiding behind the books.
But it's even anything. It's like, oh, I want to start a business, and they're like, oh, I'm just learning about it. Like, I just want to keep learning and learning and learning. It's like, dude, when are you going to just fucking
do the thing?
Do the thing. Like, you're not the reason. Like, you're going to learn about 10 times more as soon as you start actually doing the thing. So it's like, yeah, that's a side note anyway. But having that student mentality has been like what has been allowed me to learn so much. Like I love it, man. That's if I got to a point where I literally felt like I knew everything, or even just changed my mindset to that, I think I'd get bored with what I'm doing straight away. You know me, I'm always listening, learning. There's not a time where I'm not really listening to a podcast.
Oh, you're always sucking in it, for sure.
Yeah. So that's
the best. So I was just saying, that's the best part about the sport in the industry. That there's no wrong or right way to do it. There might be better ways to do it for individuals, but that is the best part about it. It's an individual approach, and you can always learn new and better ways, or just different ways to approach an individual, because like no body types can be the same. There's age, there's height, there's sex, there's race comes into it. Like there's heaps of things. There's no this is the best A to B. There's A to B. There's also A to C or A to D, A to A. You know what I mean? So I think if you do close off that mentality, you're never going to learn, and you can't look back and go, oh, we should have done this, because you're like, oh, it was perfect. We did everything right. Well, you did everything right, but it just may not have been the best way to get from A to B. That's all it is. And if you close that mindset off and your glass is full, then how are you supposed to learn for the next time or the next person? Do you know what I mean?
Dude, just going back on what you said, one thing like I try and like, because a lot of my learning is, I guess, written on the backbone of like evidence-based stuff. But I'm so careful when I am listening to someone else to just completely forget about that stuff, because I understand the value of like experience. Do you know what I mean? Like I could be learning from I could be listening to someone talk, and you know, someone that's like evidence-based or whatever may dismiss what they're saying because it's not, you know, textbook or whatever. That's when my ears open up the most, because fuck, the evidence-based stuff, like, it'll only get you so far, but then these little situations when you listen to what people are doing in preps give you insight. Like it might be so small, but it just gives you insight into if that thing ever happens. There's no book you can go to fucking read about, you know, peaking someone or, I mean, there is, but like you said, Dave, it's so person dependent. Like we're looking at age, gender, race, you know, what they've done in the last whatever
even with
time
that book,
period.
there's no fucking book on peaking. Like, yeah, you have people that are like explaining, you know, the sodium potassium pumping, you know, concentration gradients with water and sodium and fucking potassium, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, let's not kid ourselves that there's no research on peaking bodybuilders for shows. It's all extrapolated from distance runners. It's all extrapolated from other sports, you know? So even something simple as that, like there is no evidence based.
They're sports that people are not showing their legs, the conditioning of their legs. It's for performance, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, they're full of glycogen, but no one's looked at how they're looking.
So even if you look at anyone that's truly evidence-based, like say Eric Helms, for example, that is actually in the research, they'll be the first person to tell you how much of an area of gray there is. You know, they will be the first person to say that. They will never like say this is absolutely the way to do it. They'll always be like, oh, but this could happen. This is a different context here, and it's always a different like answer or approach. You know, like
that's why. Sorry, cut you off there. But that's why it's frustrating between like there's always going to be a line where your results will take you so far. So people are like, oh, it's just a cookie cutter diet, but one of the biggest things when I was doing group training was like people don't understand like, oh, what's the secret? What's your split? Or what foods do you take? Or how many times a day do you eat? Or what calories you want? Like everything's different. So yeah, a cookie cutter will get you so far. But like you were discussing before, your protein's on X and mine's on Y. Your cardio is on X and mine's on Y. I might train twice a day. The twice a day might not work for you, but you can't explain that to everybody. You can't say, hey. And that's why people are like, oh, you can't give them a cookie cutter diet. But to hit a population on a whole, you've got to give them something that's mainstream. But if someone comes up to you and goes, hey, I want to get the absolute 1 percentile out of my body and I want to get on stage, well, that's where you go, cool. We've got to focus on water retention. We've got to focus on carb cycle. We've got to focus on trainings. But you can't do that to everybody. So you've got to say eat 4 to 5 times a day, eat X amount of calories and train. But that'll get you up to a certain point, and past that point, you've really got to start to look into individual approach. But that's why it's not frustrating when someone goes, oh, how many times a day do you train, or what calories are you sitting on, or what foods do you eat? Well, it's like asking someone, you know, what books are you reading to be successful? Well, these books work for me and my industry. They're not going to work for you and your industry. That's a completely different approach, and you can't. It's not a one size fits all shop, you know what I mean?
I think it's good to like for people to ask the questions, but they should just take little tippets from that and then apply it to their own life. Not just like, all right, I'm just going to fucking take Dave's training program and I'm going to run that exactly myself and see what happens, you know?
But that's not how society works now. What was Simon Sinek saying? Like he was saying that everything right now is just so fast. If you want to date, there's an app for it. You want food, there's an app for it. You want to get shredded, there's an app for it. Everything's done in 6 to 8 week cycles because that's where the money is. So everyone thinks there's a secret to getting from A to B. Like, oh, it's it's creatine. Oh, it's BCAs. Oh, it's 10,000 steps a day. Well, it doesn't work that way. Do you know what I mean? But I guess that's the way society is. Everything's just so fast now. Everybody expects things so fast, and everybody thinks the answer is going to be so short. But to get your results, it takes years. But you can't be like, all right, well, cool, we're going to start now, and in 10 years' time, let's get your goals. People like, no, I want my goals by 4 weeks. What's the look? Okay, well, do you know what I mean?
Bro, I can tell you also, I've learnt the most when it comes to prep from the mistakes I've made. Honestly, like the time, and that's the thing. Like, if you have an ego, you're not going to realize that. That's one thing with me. It's like, fuck, I made a massive mistake there. Like, because I'll go back and analyze every step of the fucking prep of whoever I'm working with, and be like, that I could have done better. This I could have done better, and now like this needs to be implemented into someone's next prep, or that person's next prep. Peaking, I've learned the most from mistakes. Length of diet is diets like a long time ago. Like, I was finding that I wasn't getting to where I needed to with a certain length of diet, so I started going hard really early on in the beginning, with some people. And that's how I kind of combated that. Like, because I would get to the end of the prep, and like a lot of time I wish we had more time. This person could be better, more ready. In the old days when we used to, preps used to be a lot shorter. So a lot of my mistakes, I was able to go and...
Bro, my first prep was 8.
8 weeks?
Yeah, my first prep was 8 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Lost 20 kilos in 8 weeks.
And that's how it used to be.
I went in hard, bro. I went in so hard.
My first prep was 12 weeks.
Cardio. Nah, your first prep was 12 weeks?
First prep was 12 weeks, yeah. And for me, I would need longer than that, right?
Yeah, especially for you. Like, for me, I actually looked okay because I can get the weight off because I do respond quite well. But I was doing like 2 hours of cardio a day. I was probably on like less than 1,000 calories. Like, and I was fucking the Walking Dead. Like, legitimately.
You actually looked pretty good.
I actually didn't look too bad.
Yeah, the photos are good. Hey, bro,
I don't know if I've shown you those photos of my first comp.
I've only seen the one that's... I've seen photos, but it may not have been from your first comp.
No, that was the other one I did. Yeah.
I was so skinny for my first comp.
Yeah. I looked like an emancipated fucking
living
sort of patient. Yeah, it was fucked up. To be fair, I was like 17, but
yeah, this bro, he was competing early, Dave. Like, this guy was fucking competing when we were still fucking doing fuck all.
Were you a competitor or an admitted?
My first show was 2013.
2013.
Only like 10 years ago.
My first show was 2011.
My first show was 2022.
Chris, have you got questions?
Actually, yeah. Let me pull these questions up here. All right. So the first question that I've got. Oh fuck! I've lost him. It's been. Oh, hang on. No, here we go. Bulking versus cutting. How the training plan changes. Logical reasoning behind said change. So let's kick this one off. Initially saying that, to be perfectly honest, towards the initial phases and the mid phase of a diet, I don't think things need to change too much. The only thing that will realistically change as you progress through a fat loss phase is your ability to recover from the same amounts of training volume. But if you just drop your volume way down, what can actually happen is the maintenance volume for weaker muscle groups actually increases when you drive up catabolic processes that come with being in an extended period of a calorie deficit. So those maintenance volumes, so say, for example, like you have a weaker muscle group, so say like your chest, for example, where your maintenance volume on higher said food in a calorie surplus or maintenance maybe like 8 to 10 sets a week, that may increase to 10 to 15 sets per week just because those catabolic processes can potentially break down that tissue. So the only thing that really changes in terms of, is just your ability to recover throughout an entire...
So what you're saying is as the food gets lower, you need more stimulus in
to a degree. Your maximum recoverable volume will come down, but your maximum adaptive volume will still be around that same sort of area. It may still shift down a little bit as well, it's going to be relative to where your volume was at the beginning of your contest prep though. So it may only go up a little bit. It's not like you need to push all the way up to your like ceiling volume and overreach every week because you'll be fucked. But yeah, like it's going to come down, but because if you keep the same stimulus and the catabolic processes are going up and you don't have the same level of input that you once did have, your volume requirement will actually go up a little bit.
But then how will you recover from that in order to actually
because you're not at your maximum recoverable volume, right? You're still starting your mesocycle at a lower volume. So at like your minimal, what's technically minimally effective, because you're not going to be growing a ton of muscle tissue, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't still try and progress like you normally would throughout a mesocycle.
Yeah. Okay, so say let's do an example. So say say 10 sets is your minimum. Okay, so say chest 10 sets.
This is your minimum in a hypercaloric state.
No,
hypocaloric state.
Well, okay, let's say 10 sets is your minimum in a hypercaloric state.
You're in a gaining phase.
You're in a gaining phase. Yep. And then you go into a hypocaloric state, so a calorie deficit. What are you saying is changing?
So I'm saying that your maintenance volume, in order for you to maintain that same level of stimulus, because of the catabolic processes that come with muscle protein breakdown from the calorie deficit, you will need to potentially produce more stimulus on that muscle group to keep that same tissue there. It's not going to be a huge amount, but it does go up. Because if you keep the volume the same and these catabolic processes go up, muscle protein breakdown increases, and you just literally keep volume the same, like your maintenance volume would be lower, would be not as much. So for example, if let's just say you're in a maintenance block of training, this would be a better way to explain. If you're in a maintenance block of training, and in order for you to maintain your current chest at a hypocaloric state when you're in a calorie surplus, you may need, let's just say 5 working sets, right? That's when food's really high. That number will shift up. It may go from 5 to 10 to maintain the same stimulus to the chest, because the catabolic processes, if you're in a heavy calorie deficit, that it's not going to go up to like 20. If you push up to 20, like your maximum recoverable volume is going to come down.
I understand what you're saying.
But if you were to do 3 sets again, you would lose the muscle tissue, right? So if you kept your maintenance volume the same, if you did 5 sets or under 5 sets, just say 3, because 3 hard working sets is probably enough to maintain that level of muscle mass in a calorie surplus. That would not be sufficient to maintain that in a calorie deficit. So the stimulus needs to go up. Doesn't need to go to maximum recoverable volume, but it needs to go up. Otherwise, you will lose muscle tissue. Because if you kept it at 3 sets, you will lose muscle tissue to some degree, because you don't have the same metabolic input you once did from the training stimulus.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. Because if you were to, okay, so say you increase the volume 5 sets from 5 to
You're
10.
always increasing volume though, like always, regardless. At some degree of volume is going to increase, whether it's intensity, working sets, or additional reps for the same load.
Okay, but we know this. Your strength is not probably going to increase because you're in the depths of a deficit. Maybe initially, yes, but say you're in the back end. So that variable's gone. It's most likely that you're going to do it through volume.
Yeah, potentially.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what else? What other variable could be?
Well, yeah, like volume as well. Like you could potentially add working sets. I probably wouldn't do that a ton towards the back end of a prep, but
well, that's what I'm saying. So how are you saying? How are you justifying that then?
What do you mean?
So like if you're saying it has to go from, just for instance, 5 to 10 to get the same stimulus and not be catabolic.
You just said it then yourself. You got to go to that, like it's going to be higher because the catabolic inputs outweigh the anabolic inputs.
Yes, but you still don't have the food there to actually create recovery.
But you have enough. You do, because that's still your minimum effective to maximum adaptive range. That's not you pushing to MRV. Your MRV or maximum recoverable volume will come down.
Okay, so it's still under.
It's still the bandwidth range. It's just your maintenance volume for that same level of muscle tissue, because of the catabolic inputs, needs to go up a little bit. So you may need to do, let's say, like I said before, you may need 5 sets to maintain it in a gaining phase. You may need more like 7, 8 to 10 maybe not 10, but you may need more like 7 to 8 in a heavy period of a calorie deficit.
So
Otherwise, you will lose that muscle.
How are you, I guess, planning that in your prep?
Well, I mean, you'll always have a good understanding if you work with someone for long enough. You'll have a good understanding of what their volume requirements are.
I'm talking for you
in terms of like their working sets. Yeah. So you'll have an understanding of their. Even for myself, same thing. Yeah. I'll have a good understanding of what my my current, I suppose, working volumes are for whatever cycle of training I'm in. So I know for a fact for myself, like my chest, I can generally recover well from anywhere from 10 to 15 working sets, provided that I'm doing say like some sort of a push-pull leg split where I'm training chest twice a week.
And what's your maximum recoverable volume?
So in that instance, if I'm training
with your chest,
I'm
just saying for your chest, yeah.
If I'm training twice a week, I could probably go, I reckon probably about 16 sets it depends if I'm trying what the proximity to failure is of that actual mesocycle as well. But if the proximity to failure of that mesocycle is like I'm pushing really hard to failure, it's probably going to be on the lower end. So it'll be somewhere probably close to 12. If I'm actually leaving reps in reserve, I could probably go up to 17, 18, potentially even closer to 20. Okay. That's in an off-season setting. So as I progress through a fat loss phase, so I'll give you an example of this last mesocycle training that we've done. Because obviously for me, we know now we're getting relatively closer to show. Obviously the catabolic inputs are obviously starting to escalate now in terms of like the deficit. So the deficit's starting to get larger, output's starting to go up. I'm starting to get hungrier. I'm at more of a risk of potential proteolysis or muscle protein breakdown. So pretty much now, as a way to offset that, obviously for me now, we started this mesocycle at say 12 working sets for chest. And now this is the first time that we've actually started to use in this prep auto-regulated set additions to offset strength loss within this block, right? So now that's not an excuse for me to be like, all right, I'm just going to fucking sandbag sets. It may be like, my strength's actually gone down within week, let's say I've got to the third week of a block and my strength's gone down on an exercise for that. So for chest, for example, on let's just say a flat dumbbell press. Now I've added a working set to kind of offset that as another means of providing stimulus and progression to the program. Yeah. Right. I won't always add working sets, and I will only ever do it in this instance on muscle groups that are actually at risk of flattening out or losing muscle tissue. In my case, chest and lats. Whereas like for my quads, I'll keep that stagnant across the whole entire mesocycle. So that will literally stay at 6 or 7, right? But that has actually gone up a little bit because in an off-season setting, I may be able to maintain my quads on 5 sets. But because of the catabolic inputs, I've escalated that up to closer to 7 sets, right? And plus, I probably need to start offsetting a little bit more, doing a bit of extra work because in an off-season setting, I only like to do 2 sets of an exercise or a working set. But, for example, if I jump on the hack squat and I can only do 2 sets, as my joints start to get a bit more compromised and I'm trying to maintain stimulus in muscle tissue, I may need to do that extra set to, take some of the stress off the tendons on my knees, so that's an instance there where I've actually increased working sets in terms of set volume where I otherwise wouldn't in an off-season setting. Yeah. Whereas I'm still skewing a majority of my volume towards muscle groups that, still require it because, obviously for me and Dave, given the supplement side of things, we still have the potential to grow. Would I be doing this as much with a natural? Potentially not.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah. Because
it's still, even for a natural, it's still going to be the same as well, to a degree.
Yeah, I get you, but I don't think it'd be to the same degree, honestly. Like, and not even close to the same degree.
Well, it's like I said before, it's not that much of a massive number. Like I said before, it's like if you maintain on 5 sets, that need may go up to 7 or 8. That's not much.
I think if the intensity and the load is dropping, yes, then that makes sense because you're adding sets, but the volume is the same because the load has gone down, the intensity has maybe gone down, so you're lifting up volume to get it even again. Do you understand? You're not lifting up volume to make more volume than you were before. It's only because these two things are compromised now. They're going down.
No, well, volume will go up because that's still a greater input. So like adding an entire working set is a greater input than adding a single rep or adding 2.5 kilos to the bar. So it's an extra means of still driving progression. So all I was saying before is that your maintenance volume for a muscle group will increase a little bit the further you go into a calorie deficit. Okay. You will need to do a little bit more work. You don't need to do it. So I'm not talking that you may need to go from doing like 10 sets to doing 20 sets.
Yeah.
But that need will go up a little bit to maintain the same level of tissue on that area.
Okay.
The maintenance volume will shift up. Catabolic processes. It's going to happen.
Listen to this. Okay. Say you're doing a pendulum squat, all right? Just for instance, you're doing a pendulum squat with 40 kilos through your off season and everything. Okay. It's been progressing up, but you say you got it to 40 kilos. All right. Then you start your prep and that goes down to, say you did 40 kilos, 2 sets of 10. Okay. So over the prep, as it starts to get deeper into the prep, say that is now down to 7 reps per set. So you've dropped 2 to 3 reps. Say, we'll just say 3 for the example, right? So you've done set 2 times 7. Then you go, all right, I'm going to add another set to make up for the 3 reps that I'm losing on each set. So you've gone from ineffective reps. Have you gained effective reps? I don't think you.
If it's in a relative proximity to failure,
you have.
then yes.
Yeah, you have. Because say
it's just stimulus. It's just stimulus. Like it's not. You're looking at it from a one-dimensional perspective. You're literally just adding stimulus. That's it.
Yeah. Because you would have gone, okay, so say the last 3 or 4 reps are effective, and now you've added another 3 or 4 effective reps, basically.
Yeah. And even if you add that working set, like you may do it at a repetitions in reserve scheme, like because otherwise you may accumulate too much fatigue. You know,
that's the kind of angle I'm looking at it from.
Trying to keep that. Yeah. So you're not just gonna add another. Let's just say you're doing 2 sets to failure. You're not gonna add a 3rd working set to failure, because otherwise you'll just drive yourself into the ground.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking.
If you're going to add a working set, you're going to add a working set, but the total workload may be higher across the board. If you add a working set, but maybe you're training at a 2 RIR.
Yeah.
So the total work done in that session may be potentially less systemically taxing, but you've gotten a greater stimulus.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not
I
always
agree with that. I agree with that if that's the kind of method. Yeah. But if you're going just like 2 sets to failure to 3 sets to failure.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do
cooked.
that.
Like
you'd be cooked. Yeah.
That's what I'd not be doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I wouldn't be doing that.
I'd be looking at lowering the intensity of the sets, and then maybe adding. Yeah, it's interesting because I guess when you look at old school bodybuilders, that's what they kind of intuitively did. You know, maybe to more of a degree than they needed to. Like, you know, maybe they switched to lighter, weights and higher reps, but I think
that was like a method they used of periodizing almost.
The thought behind it, like they did it instinctively. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what they were running into those issues as well. They were going, fuck, I've been squatting like a motherfucker for my whole off season, like focusing on strength, putting weight on the bar. Now, like I'm feeling so fatigued every time I do that because I'm in the middle of a prep.
Dude, I'll actually tell you something that's really interesting. It makes more sense
to do lower the weight a little bit, have a little bit more lower intensity in terms of reps in reserve, and do more volume. Do you know what I mean?
Dude, I'll tell you something that has been probably the biggest difference in this prep. So last prep, I literally every single thing I did in terms of training, I basically was doing lower volumes and I took every single set to failure, right? The difference in the look of my physique from actually doing just slightly higher volumes of work, but keeping some reps in reserve. And then say I started a mesocycle at 1 to 2 reps, or maybe 2 reps in reserve. And then the next week is 1 to 2, 1 to 2, and then maybe 0 to 1 in the final week. The look and the difference in the terms of fullness to my physique, I look fresh. The muscles have so much more fullness and pop to them. And the physique just looks so much better. And plus, psychologically, I feel way better and I feel way fresher.
I think the anxiety of going into sessions
that nervous system fatigue, bro, it's just fucking drives you into the ground. And I was of the mentality of I got to train harder. I got to train harder. I got to train harder and try and push this set past failure to failure. And I guarantee every single time my physique looks worse.
It's one-dimensional. Really that method is one-dimensional. And it's it doesn't, as you get deeper into a prep, you're fatigued and then you're starting to get mentally fatigued from even thinking about doing that session.
And it makes the adherence to the diet harder as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%, bro. They're not.
I know it
looking at
can be a
enough
hard
variables.
concept for people to wrap their head around, actually leaving reps in the tank. But bro, the difference in this prep that I've noticed from doing that, when I say leaving reps in the tank, like I'm not saying like, oh, I'm just kind of stopping when it gets hard, you know, like literally I'm stopping when there's a gun. If it's a 2 reps in reserve, there's a fucking gun to my head, 2 reps in reserve. And there's a difference between that and like that to most people would probably look like failure, you know? But I know I've still got another 2 there if I was to like fucking really push it. So the difference I've noticed, man, is, and it's fucking crazy. Like the fullness and the pop that I've got now that I didn't have then, it's a different look.
Dave, because you were doing the low volume stuff for a while. Are you still doing that?
It's just so much fucking science. My head is hurting right now.
Bro, I don't even remember the question.
Me. Bro, so much science. So much science. I did this sport so I don't have to think, and you guys are making the sport shit.
But just
that's
your opinion. I want to know
legit.
You're in the trenches opinion as well.
Yeah, your experience with it, like, because you were doing like a working in a back offset program, remember?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't speak for more than 2 weeks out, so I don't know what those last 2 weeks are like. But I know
just now. I'm talking about just now. Like you've been through a couple of preps where you've got a little bit deeper into the prep. What's the training philosophy? Like, what is your training right now, and what was it like? Compare it to like, I guess, something else.
Man, I've tried. So only for the last 2 weeks, I backed it off because I felt like I wasn't recovering as much. So I think it got to a point where I was perfectly fine. But I think the first time in my life, my CNS, I think that was actually cop and abuse, and I just wasn't recovering. And I'd go into my workouts feeling a little bit nervous and worried because I'm like, I know mentally I can't give this workout 100%. So I thought, all right, I'll do like a bit of a deload week where I increased the volume and didn't go balls to the wall. So I just did a whole pyramid scheme where you do 4 or 5 sets, slowly tapering up. But there's no set sets, drop sets, cluster sets, none of that stuff. It was just.
I love that style of training. I honestly love that style of training. I use it with a lot of clients, man.
That's the way I feel my body responds best. And it's just literally 1 or 2 sets warming up with, and then 1 or 2 sets where there's nothing left in the tank. And, you know, I did a leg press the other day. It went for 7 minutes. We did 120 something. 120 something reps we did. We did a pyramid drop set to a reverse set. So we did like 10 plates aside, stripped it off, and then put the fuckers back on. But it was just 1 set and that was it. It was done. So I think the muscle recruitment for that just dominates. So, and then after that, you just do a whole bunch of accessories and your workout's finished. And that's where I reckon my body responds best to. So the last couple of weeks I've deloaded, then I got sick. So I didn't have the intensity to go balls to the wall. And I really feel like my physique changes. Just like as Chris was saying, it gets a bit softer and it just doesn't, I don't feel it looks as good. So if I could stick to a routine, it would be 1 to 2 sets, balls to the wall, move to the next exercise. Do you know what I mean? But I think it gets to a point where your central nervous system is like, you might be recovering up here, but I haven't got any left for you. So
think about this as well, you know, like the further you get into prep, the more your leverages change, the more you're predisposing yourself to injury as well. 100%. You know, like it just takes 1 injury, you fuck your quad, your bodybuilding career is done, you know? So that's why it's so important, I think, like that, especially in that latter end of prep.
But this is why the novel stimulus is good, because like if you're going from, okay, I'm doing a top set, back off, you get to a point where it's like mentally and physically you're fatigued, then you switch to something else where like the focus is on like a different stimulus. This is recovering. The first thing that you've done, you know, you're kind of recovering from while you're stimulating in a different way in the next block kind of thing. So that's why I love alternating from phase to phase like that.
Yeah, I think your body will still grow, but I think Andrew nailed it. You both obviously nailed it, but I think it's just, it'll become a point where your training style brings on diminishing gains, I believe. So you can't, obviously, as your calories goes down, as Chris said, in fucking science terms, you're going to have to change it up. But as Andrew says, my 3 brain cells respond better to that. You just kind of listen to your body. So 3 sets balls to the wall becomes 5 sets not as balls to the wall because you haven't got it in you. But I think as long as you put the work in the back end, those last 4 to 6 weeks, you can start to taper off. But every 4, 6, 8 weeks, even in off season, I think you got to give your body a bit of a rest to let your central nervous system kind of shut down a little bit and say, hey, cool, recover, then get back into whatever training style works best for you. Because as you said, Chris, there's a difference between maxing out and then going suicidal. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a huge difference between the two. And I don't think people understand that concept, but to get your body to go to that point, you've got to be at a certain level. But as you said, towards, and again, I can only speak 2 weeks out, as you get closer to the prep, you've got to kind of realize what.
Manage it.
Yeah, you've got to manage the like stimulus to fatigue ratio.
100%. Yeah.
Very interesting.
I think it's just what works best for you, but I think my body definitely responds to just, and I enjoy that, man. Like I know if I'm nervous for a session, I'm gonna have a good session. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't walk into a leg day not feeling sick. Like you're not training hard enough. That's all I'm saying. But I enjoy that. Rather than spending 4 hours in the gym and 407 sets. Do you know what I mean? But each to their own, I guess.
I think one thing that actually changes as well with exercise selection, I mentioned the stimulus to fatigue ratio before, is exercise selection as well. So like where, you may be trying to target hamstrings and glutes and you're doing a deadlift, for example, maybe you switch that to an RDL, something that's going to be less aesthetically demanding, potentially have a higher degree of stimulus but lower fatigue. And you just may start changing those exercises. So if you're doing like free weight exercises, you may do more machine based. Because again, at the end of the day, we're training for hypertrophy here. So the goal is to try and get that muscle in a relative proximity to failure. It doesn't need to be always free weight movements, Plus, like I said, predisposing yourself to injury, the closer you get to a show, like it only takes one injury and your bodybuilding career is done. You tear your adductor, you tear your quad, you tear your pec, you're fucked. That's it. Yeah.
And I think if you can time that well, like no matter what yo-yo diet you do, your body's going to respond to it for 2 to 4 weeks. So they say, do this diet, do that diet, lemon and water diet. Yeah, well, it's going to work for 2 to 3 weeks before your body catches up and goes, hang on a second, this is not the right thing to do. Now you're starting to go backwards. And I think that's the same as training. If you're doing deadies for 10 months solid out of the year, and then you stop doing deadies and switch that to an RDL or some sort of hamstring movement to try and replicate that, I think your body's still going to respond to it. After a while, your body might not respond to it as well as a deadlift, but for that, if you can time it right, where you back off from the deadies and change to a more appropriate movement to utilize the food that you're getting in kind of thing, but try and replicate the same gains, I think your body will respond. Then after 4 weeks, it goes, oh, hang on, I'm not getting as much stimulus as a deadlift, so now I'm not going to get as much return for your gains. Does that make sense? So I think if you can time it right, where you're doing a specific movement for majority of the year, then you back it off and switch it out to work with your body, you're still going to get effective results for it. If you can get that the last 3 or 4 weeks, again, I don't know, then I feel like it's going to be just as good for your gains, essentially, for that small gap.
Well, the relative risk of injury of getting injured during the off-season deadlifting is way lower than what it is in a contest prep.
Well, you're talking to the injury king here, so mate.
I think it's wise to like switch to like more machine training the closer you get. Anything that's going to minimize the risk and allow you to put as more stimulus on the muscle, less stimulus on the joints and central nervous system is.
But the body doesn't know what exercise it is. It just knows movement pattern. So whether or not you're doing a flat dumbbell press, whether you're doing a converging machine chest press, whether you're doing a deadlift, whether you're doing a stiff leg deadlift, the body does not know. It only knows the relative tension that it's being exposed to. So even still, in that instance that Dave said, I actually disagree. I actually think that you don't even need to do. You need to do a hip hinge. You don't necessarily need to do a conventional deadlift from the floor. You can do a stiff leg deadlift, RDL, dumbbell RDL, as long as you're doing, or a 45-degree hip extension loaded. Like they're all targeting the same muscle. And if you're able to provide an overload to those muscles every single week, they're going to grow. You don't need to deadlift. You don't need to bench press. You don't need to barbell squat, but you need to do variation of all of them.
That's it. And no disrespect to people who do that, because whatever, they're fantastic movements. But some of the old school blokes, they're like, oh, how much you bench press? And Dorian was like, I don't bench press. Like, I don't, I might do
the barbell squat either, right?
You didn't barbell squat either.
I don't squat. I don't bench press. It's just the gain to injury or pain in the ass ratio for me is just not there. So I squatted solid for 12 to 18 months. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this. Can't be bothered. So I Smith machine leg press. Could I have gained more from doing a squat? Well, fuck, I won't know. Do you know what I mean? But for me, there was just no comparison between the injury and the amount of pressure I was putting my body to the gains I was getting from doing another movement that was similar. So no, I don't bench
the
press.
Question there yourself, right? Like if you squatted and got injured, you're not making any gains.
100%.
And the
I've
thing is,
always
like,
got,
you could almost like leg press 3 times a week, and as opposed to like squatting once a week, like the amount of fatigue that it causes. You know what I mean? You get like 3 times the
You
amount of
probably
volume
get
in.
more growth from the leg press than you would from the barbell
Yeah.
squat.
but then it goes back to the point we were saying before. Like, too many people are listening to too many people saying do X, Y, and Z to get growth, or they go on Instagram or YouTube and they see someone doing an exercise and they go, "Cool, I'll replicate that because that's going to work for me." Well, there's a lot of exercise that work for me that won't work for somebody else. And I think conversations like this, where you say, here's some good movements, but you don't necessarily have to do those movements. Too many people go, cool, your chest workout should include X, Y, and Z. You go do X, Y, and Z, don't get the gains, or you injure yourself, and there's no point doing it. Like, just because since the beginning of time, everyone's gone squat, dead, and fucking bench. And I just don't do any of those movements. Do you know what I mean? So what works for somebody doesn't work for somebody else. But I think there's too many people saying this is what you need to do to grow. Yeah, it should be more, these are the movements you can do to grow, or hang on a second, try something else. Like, what was Dorian saying? He always started with an incline or a decline, never hit a flat, or he never did X, Y, and Z. And I don't know. I just think that's a better way to look at it rather than saying this is what you need to do to get results.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it comes down to doing, like, I mean, if you're starting like with us or whatever, we do a movement assessment. It comes down to where you're starting from, and then what is going to create the most amount of stimulus, and what is going to be the movement that you can progress the best at, bro.
Everyone's going to have a different active range of a joint as well. You know,
I
like if you
love-
chuck someone at a barbell back squat, then it may not even have the range in the hips and the ankles in order to get to that position. So they may be better off using a different exercise that they can take through a fuller range of motion. You know?
Example, like, I get nothing out of incline pressing. I flat press, I progress the best. I get a way more stimulation in the whole of my chest. I do an incline press, I don't feel anything in my chest. Anything. I never have. So it's like, I barely do it anymore, man. I honestly barely do it. And it's just how you put together. Everyone's put together differently. Joints, angles, you know what I mean? Arm length, whatever. You're going to feel different stuff. Like, do you do a lot of incline stuff? Yeah, Chris?
Yeah. So I think just the way that my pec inserts onto like the humerus and onto the bridge of like my sternum and like my rib cage, the way that it like inserts, like it's more so I get much more out of incline movements.
Yeah,
so I get barely anything out of flat. It's all front delt. So I literally, as soon as I feel the shoulder at 90 degrees, literally that's all front delt for me.
Yeah.
You know? And this is a great example because for you, that's fantastic. But you know, for me, like I just get nothing out of it. Whereas like if I bring the shoulder joint around a little bit more and I'm pressing more with a converging plane here, I get way more out of it. You know, so even that just is a great example just between the two of us.
But that's being so intuitive and in touch with your own body. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one else could tell you that. That's something that you've obviously learned over the time, and you've just gone, you know what, this doesn't work for me, and then not going to do it, which is awesome.
100%. Bro, we haven't answered. Have we answered the question?
Yeah, I think we answered the question. How long have we been going for, actually?
Oh, bro, is there any more questions?
Should we split this into two? This episode into two?
We can. I can get Lucas.
You've done one question.
And we can go a little bit. We can go a little bit longer.
Yeah, we can split it into two. What's the next question? Done one question.
High volume versus low volume. I think we also covered that in there as well.
Yeah, that was in there. Well, there you go. There you go.
So we covered two questions.
Twofer.
I think I had one more. Hang on a sec. Where was it? I had someone inbox actually DM me. How do you think COVID will affect my strength and fitness?
I haven't had it, so I wouldn't have a fucking clue. But
I mean, Dave's probably the best
some
one
days,
to
Dave has it. Some days he doesn't.
Well, on Wednesdays when I've got COVID, it affects me, but on Thursdays, no, I don't know. So one of the clients came to me the other day and she goes, I'm so depressed and down with myself today. And I said, what's going on? She goes, well, I've just come back from COVID, had a week off training, and my diet hasn't been that good because I've been on holidays. I'm like, well, you've kind of answered your own questions. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you haven't fully recovered yet, you've had a shit week and your eating hasn't been there, well, then obviously it's not going to work. So you're not going to lose, results in 1 or 2 weeks of even if you did nothing and ate Macca's 6 days a week, you're probably not going to lose that much. Do you know what I mean? If you're doing some sort of half-assed workout or trying to safely get through the virus, you're not going to lose 6 years of hard gains in 2 weeks of 50% on training. It just doesn't happen that way, I don't think. So just do the best you can. But rest and recovery for this shit, I reckon, is key. I'm not one of those people who likes to sweat it out. If your body can rest, then rest. But what's a week or two of half-ass training going to do? Just to think, concentrate on your food, concentrate on what you can concentrate on,
Like you
and
said,
let go of
concentrate
what
on
you
the
can't.
food. Now, like I said
Exactly.
before with the maintenance volumes, if you have an abundance of calories coming in and you're eating at maintenance or above, your maintenance volume is going to be lower. So because you've got those anabolic inputs from the protein and the surplus of calories, you're going to be able to maintain more of that muscle mass. So if you're not, I think in this period, it's not a good time for you to try and start dieting. If you've got no training stimulus, you're going to be likely driving up those catabolic inputs, so you could potentially lose muscle mass. So I think at very minimum, try and maintain, like just eat at maintenance calories.
Yeah.
I think
I
that's
think it
probably
also
the best
just
way.
depends on how bad you get it as well, man. Like,
If you can't eat, you can't eat. You're
no,
fucked,
but I'm saying like even in the back, like once it's done, like some people are obviously feeling a lot more fatigued than other people. Like Caitlin had it this week and she was feeling quite tired the week after. Like this week was the week after. Some like people feel fine like within a few days. So it just depends on the severity. Everyone seems to, it's like a lucky dip in terms of like how severe you're going to go, it seems like. And if you get it bad, you just got to fucking deal with it, like, and not push yourself too quickly getting back into things, I think.
Listen to your body 100%. I think one of the things that's worked for me is I started doing 2 sessions, like putting my cardio and shit on the back end and doing my main workout to start with. But now I'm kind of splitting the sessions up to 2 because my energy runs out after that. I have 47 scoops of pre-workout and it'll last me like 40, 45 minutes. Do you know what I mean? So I can successfully last about 30 to 35 minutes. Then I've got to cut it off and come back at a later stage. It helps for me because I have no friends and no life. But obviously, your workouts aren't going to be as good if your energy and your food's not there. Like,
are you still feeling it?
Me, I'm fine. I'm so tired. I get up and I've got to go back to bed. Like it's
really. I think that's very common as well, man.
But like disgusting lethargic. Like I work for a couple hours and I'm like, yo, I've got to go have a sleep. So that's all I'm feeling right now, which is manageable because I'll just work. So tired.
Chris, are you worried?
I would be.
About getting it? Are you like at the wrong timing?
Yeah, I want to catch it now. I want to get it now so I can get it over and done with,
You should have gone to his house on that Wednesday. You should have gone
to it only covers you for like 30 to 60 days, someone says. So even if you get it now, you can get it again in 4 to 6 weeks' time.
Okay.
I think you're less likely. You surely would be less likely, surely. Or less severity anyway.
Maybe, surely the severity would be less. We got another question here as well. We got another 2. So the next one was, how do I know what class I should choose? i.e. difference between classic, men's physique, and bodybuilding. So it's a dude, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think actually, because you've got a classic guy here and you've got a bodybuilding guy here. So why don't you explain? Why don't you explain like what maybe the difference is between my physique, Dave's physique, and someone like the Black Terminator, like what fits the class kind of thing.
I think like whenever I get a new client in, I always assess their physique first. Sometimes it's not always clear because they're not lean enough yet as well. But I guess with open bodybuilding, what I look at is, because a classic looking bodybuilder can still do well in bodybuilding. But what I'm looking at is, okay, does this guy have enough muscle mass to be competitive in the open division? So I'd be looking at what is the standard for his weight class. So say for Dave, he's under 90s. I'll be looking at, he would be in under 90s. So I'd be looking at, okay, what's the standard for under 90s? And then are we going to be competitive in the under 90s? So I'm not looking, with Dave, man, it was like, he's going to struggle to make the classic cutoff. So that's another thing that I'm looking at. If the person has all the options in front of them, so it's like he could do classic, could do open, be competitive, so similar to you, Chris, then I will be looking at, where did Dave go? Are you there, bro? Anyway,
probably went to bed.
Then I will be looking at where are they going to fit the best and be the most competitive. So say if your options are, you can do men's physique, classic, and open. I just assess the physique and see where it's going to fit both. If someone has great legs, great flow, great shape, great symmetry, fits into classic, and even on a pro level, they're going to be competitive. Like some people might win an amateur show in open, but in the pro league, they're going to be fucking, you know what I mean? They're never going to make it. So I'm looking at all of those, I guess, factors. With men's physique, I reckon a lot of guys don't do men's physique that should probably do men's physique. Like if you're wanting to, I guess, be competitive on a pro level, a lot of people should probably start in men's physique. Do you know what I mean? If as they grow, maybe they graduate on, but a lot of guys like who do classic, I mean, a lot of people do both now, so it's like they test the waters in both, I guess. But
so it's kind of hard too, because classics like judging criteria is a little bit ambiguous. Like it's not as clear cut, you know. Like I think it does vary from it can vary from like even country to country. So you know what they're looking for in the US, maybe not what they're looking for in Australia, or not what they're looking for in the UK. So
I still think at the end of the day, it's pose for pose, bro. Like there are some other things that come into it. Don't get me wrong. Like they may be judging the physique on more of like a little bit more of like flow and symmetry and stuff like that, as opposed to like breaking down just the raw body parts. But at the end of the day, I reckon if you fit the weight cap and you're the most conditioned, best, well put together guy on the stage and have the most amount of muscle, I still reckon the show's going to go to you, as opposed to like a smaller guy that looks more classic. But I don't know, I could be wrong. Again, I think it depends on what country, because we have seen some instances where I guess like the more classic guy, but maybe not necessarily the best guy on stage one. Have we?
I don't know, I'm just trying to think, like in the amateurs in the recent years.
Remember that short dude who won last time we were at the show in the VIX? Remember
that? Yeah, he deserved it. Definitely did deserve it.
He did deserve it. Yeah.
I don't know if it was like I don't think that was that controversial. I mean, he obviously comes second to what Ethan. Well, he comes second to Ethan Gahari in. Well, I mean, Ethan won, but I feel like his conditioning was better. I don't know if it was literally just down to conditioning or if it was down to.
Ethan was a fucking freak.
He's a fucking absolute freak.
Yeah, like I mean, he deserved to win that. But that's what I'm saying. Like, put him on a bodybuilding stage, you think he's not going to do well? Do you know what I mean? He might not be the biggest bloke there, but fuck, he was razor sharp.
He was razor sharp. His conditioning was spot on. So yeah, I think much the same. And I'm looking at like, if got a competitor and I'm thinking, what are they going to fit for? I immediately read the judging criteria, and then I will look at what is the pinnacle of the sport. So, I mean, if you're looking at a classic guy, obviously it's Chris Bumstead. You're looking at a bodybuilding guy, obviously it's Big Ramy. But in saying that, like, Big Ramy is Big Ramy, but at the same time, the judging does vary from like, I think actually bodybuilding probably has the most clear-cut judging. If you have the most muscle, you're the most conditioned guy on stage, and your symmetry is good, you will likely win the show. Potentially in classic, a little bit more ambiguous, and same again with men's physique. But men's physique, like if you've not got wide shoulders, probably narrow hips, you're probably not going to do that well at a pro level. There's certain genetic elements to this sport that make up certain physiques. Like we touched on Fabrizio before. He is the poster boy for what you would want in men's physique, structure-wise. Bodybuilding-wise, you could probably get away with having wider hips. That kind of, if you look at like Jay Cutler, he didn't have the most narrow set of hips. But if you can add so much mass to your upper body, your chest, shoulders, arms, back, you can kind of create that illusion, but you don't necessarily need to have that really small waist. Now, same with classic again, you probably want to have a small waist. You probably want to have, nice flowy quads, and you want to have a decent, like, I think lines are probably the biggest thing, I think anyway, that separate a classic guy from a bodybuilder. When I mean lines, I mean, like, if you're looking at someone, you can look at them and just think, oh, wow, man, that guy has really nice, like really clean lines. I'm trying to think, how would you actually define that? Because we obviously know, because we look at it and we see what that looks like, but how do we actually define what, classic lines are? What do you think?
I think, how do I define it? I think it's just the way that the overall body parts put together with each other. Do you know what I mean? Like if you've got, the thing is, there's no set type. It's just like something that you actually see. Do you know what I mean? Like you could have a guy with bigger arms than, you know, his bicep is bigger than his shoulder, say, which looks good. It's like appealing. You know, I think it's more like visually appealing. But if you want
to Bumstead, he had smaller arms.
Yeah,
but it didn't detract from the overall look of his physique at all.
No, it didn't.
Well, obviously, he's the poster boy for it.
I think at the end of the day, you need a small waist and wide shoulders. Don't get me wrong. Sweeping quads, always, or like if you're looking at breaking down like a front pose, ideally you want big arms, but you want sweeping quads. You want a small waist.
If you're like looking at that silhouette, it's going to be like really nice and flowy, you know?
Yeah. They're the main things. And then I guess it can slightly come in a little bit, you know, different shapes and sizes. But I think, like you said, with Bumstead, he's like, his arms are probably smaller than what you would think should be on the best classic physique guy, just considering like a lot of classic guys had fucking massive arms. But it still looks good. And it still looks like his lines are still good.
I think that's the way that the division has kind of evolved in the years. Because if you look at the likes of like Brion, for example, like with Brion, I feel like he represents much more of a smaller bodybuilder. Mm-hmm. So I feel like they've gone away from that look now to a taller guy that's got more of a, I suppose, you know, overall classic shape rather than just like looks like a small bodybuilder almost, which I think is where the division started. And now it's kind of continued to develop as the years have gone on.
Yeah. I think that.
What do you reckon, Dave?
Yeah, what do you reckon, Dave?
Mate, as if I'd know. Bloody hell.
Do you like Chris Bumstead's physique?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think my opinion's changed on what I'm looking for in my own physique, 100%. But in terms of, yeah, I mean, I haven't even jumped up on stage yet. I mean, I guess the more you look at it, the more you watch it, the more you get your opinions on, oh, okay, that's a nice physique. But then there's so many categories out there in terms of like sports and model and fitness. It just gets away from me. Do you know what I mean? I just like to stay in the lane. But I guess one of the questions I'd have is how, like the question said, how do you know what to do? Would you recommend just going up and trying everything? Or would you literally eyeball somebody and go, look, if we can't bring your waist in, you're going to have to stick to bodybuilding, which means we've got to slap some more muscle on. Like if you were to take me, for example, I haven't got the smallest waist. So would you say you're going to have to pack some more muscle on because we can't bring that in? Or do we go, you can't pack enough muscle on, we've got to somehow work on bringing your waist in because you're just not going to fit into a category? Or are you just stuck in no man's land? Like, would you recommend just going and trying every division, or spending 1 year doing bodybuilding, 1 year doing classic? Because some people go from classic to bodybuilding or bodybuilding to classic. Like Bumstead went from bodybuilding to classic because he didn't have the physique for it. You just give up on the physique, or do you go, you know what, maybe I'm just not big enough for bodybuilding, I'm going to try a different avenue? How does it work?
I think first off, your waist is not, I wouldn't say it's too big for classic. I don't think it's that. I think in comparison to your body parts, it's not actually that big. And I think if you could make the classic cutoff, I think it would definitely be an option. But I think the whole point is you can't make the cutoff. So it's like, because when you look at it, it's like, okay, if we look at classic in the amateur league, you have the muscle mass for it. If you pose correctly and put yourself in the right positions, you will fit the criteria. So if you walk around with your stomach out and you're fucking, you know what I mean, you shit not on, then yeah, you're not going to fit the criteria. But if you work on creating shapes that work for your body, then classic, I would say, like if you could make the classic weight cut, I would have said for you to do classic. Because you've already got enough muscle mass. Like if we're going into the under 90s, like you're going to be coming correct. But when we look at who you're going to be potentially going up against in under 90s, it's a very competitive division, bro. Very competitive. Big boys,
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, because there's a lot of short people, bro. That like you think you're short, you're tall for a bodybuilder, bro. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, I think they need to change the weight thing that they're doing.
I just think the weight could come up a little bit for 170. Like, if you're going to make the weight difference literally 6 kilos between like 4 centimeters, I think that could probably come up a little bit, even 3 kilos.
What's the pro? What's the pro?
It goes up way higher again once you get to the pro leagues. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Dave would be well in the pro.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
So that's what I'm saying. That's what I hate as well, because like.
So that's why a lot of people will turn pro as a bodybuilder, because they're good enough, and then they'll do classic, because once you turn pro, you can compete in whatever division you like.
Do you think that's right?
I think in Dave's instance, just for example, I think you have to ask yourself, is it worth it as well? Because if you were to do both, right, Dave's best look may be at 88 kilos. If we diet him down to 85, 86, and he loses his legs, he could do worse in both than had he not just done one. So I think it definitely plays into the individual here and where they have the ability to potentially lose muscle if they diet too hard and diet it off. So I think it's now have the physique at their best look.
When that's what we've always said with Dave, right? Like every time he's asked a couple of times what weight, it's like just the weight you're going to look the best at, bro. Like we're going to know once we get there.
But that's definitely something you can't nail the first time. Like we could chuck me in bodybuilding and get absolutely destroyed. I mean, like, fuck, I had lost 3 or 4 kilos, maybe I would look less fat and better. Do you know what I mean? But there's no way you can nail it the first time. I think if you start bodybuilding at 17, 18, then by the time you're 25, 26, you've got your category nailed. But if you're getting into the game at my age, like you've got no hope. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just
you physically, I don't think you would have to lose muscle mass to actually get into the classic.
That's the problem.
Or dehydrate yourself to a dangerous level.
Yeah. So what's the next step then? Do you prep for another year to get to 87, which means you don't put on as much weight, or do you go for the next classic weight at 95? Like you can't decide that stuff 4 months out. You probably got to decide, cool, in a year or two's time, I got to readjust my weight, or I got to gain 20
You'd have to lose muscle.
No, 100%. Yeah, but that's something that would take a couple of shows maybe, or at least one show.
It's fucking hard to lose muscle. I can tell you that much. It's not easy. It's actually quite hard.
You're trying to purposefully lose muscle. Like it's a funny thing that people actually struggle to like lose muscle, but like it legitimately, if you've got a good solid foundation of muscle, it's quite hard to lose if you're still weight training.
And just think about trying to mentally do that, Dave. Like especially with your fucking bigorexia. Imagine just trying to lose everything that you've solely been working on for the last.
It'd be funny because you really would limit yourself to grow as well. Like you've got this very finite capacity of growth, and that's it.
If your biggest problem in life was losing muscle, you're doing all right. That's what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm getting good blow.
Is that it? Have we got any more?
Hang on, let me have a look. Was that everything we wanted to say on that?
Yeah, I think
we answered that question pretty well. Do we answer it directly enough?
Choosing the division, you need to look at who's competitive in that division and how your physique stacks up against those physiques. Firstly, starting in the amateur ranks. Secondly, then if you're looking to potentially go pro, looking at the pro ranks. So go to shows or be coached by someone that knows knows the divisions inside out. And then, look at specifically like your structure, muscularity, and what the criteria is for the division, and then work towards that. Like see how you go. Like that's the main thing as well. Like you were saying, Dave. I think it's once you get ready, once you are ready, it'll be more obvious a lot of the time, like where you should be. You agree, Chris?
Honestly, I think that pretty much covers it pretty well. Like if you're going to pick a division, like I actually think that if you're kind of like on the cusp and you're not sure, like, I think it's common that if you've got, like I said, the bone structure for it, and you're not going to know this without a trained eye telling you this, but you could still get away with doing 2 divisions in your first season. Like you could do a men's physique and classic. You could do classic and bodybuilding. At least that way you can get some judges' feedback. You can get an understanding of where you feel you best fit. And also too, if what you as an individual like the most. Like if you want to do classic, like if you love classic and you love the division, and you don't want to do bodybuilding. You're not willing to accept, because with bodybuilding, especially in the IFBB, you're going to be accepting of a certain, like some sort of level of associated risk, and if that doesn't align with you as a person and what you want to do in life, and you're not willing to do that, then maybe that is a better option for you. It may not be the best thing that's suited to your structure per se, but if you love it, then fair enough, go for it. It's just, we're looking at it probably from the perspective of being the most competitive you can be and wanting to obviously do as well as possible in the division. So I think first season, if you just want to try your hat at a couple different categories, and go for it. I don't see any harm in that. Like I did say in my own personal circumstances, like I just think because my physique is better suited to classic because of my height, and I genuinely think that because for my height, if I was to kind of hang with who I would need to hang with in bodybuilding, I'm probably too tall for how much muscle I carry. So for me, like being, let's just say, inside out peeled at 88, 89, I think for my height around 179, I'm probably going to need to be 95 plus to be competitive. So I'll have to push up a weight class in order to be competitive. Whereas in classic, like I'm right in the middle of my weight class, closer to even probably towards like the top end of my weight class. So it just makes more sense for me. And I like classic. I pose very well. So I think it's a better fit for me and my personality as well as my level of risk.
Bro, it's like anything, bro. It's like even back to the training, like after all the science mumbo jumbo, what's the best program, at the end of the day, if you don't like that program, you need to do the program that you enjoy most. Like even if it's scientifically unsound, like as long as it's not to a degree which is fucking ridiculous. You know what I mean? If you're walking in the gym, and I'm doing a top set and a fucking back off, and I fucking
love it,
I hate it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no point. It's just the same with this. Like if you love men's physique or you love classic, do that. Even if you're not going to be the most competitive person in that one. So that's it for me.
Again, it depends on your reason. I think if you choose to compete, like what is your reason? What's that? You still there?
What did you say? Yeah, you cut out.
I just said when it comes to like you picking, I lost my train of thought actually. What were we talking about? Fuck, I completely forgot now. We've been gone for so long.
The divisions. Is there any more questions?
No, I couldn't find it. That's literally all I could find. I had to fucking scroll back through all my DM notifications because the story was gone. So,
Dave.
Closing words from you, Dave? You got anything for us?
Just put him on the spot, Dave. Nah, we'll call it there, bro, because I think we've been on the line for fucking 20
Bro,
hours.
I think we could.
I'm turning catabolic, you realize.
We could get this split into two.
Bro, you think I'm cutting it into two? This is one,
oh,
baby.
Luca. Pass it to Luca.
This is one, baby. One episode, bro.
I
Guys,
turned catabolic in this episode.
Thank you for tuning in. Anything you want to say, Chris, before we take off?
No, I think that we covered everything pretty well. I think just the most important thing here with us is when we were discussing, obviously the intricacies of variables with training and nutrition, we're coming at it from the perspective of being as, I suppose, I don't love the term optimal because nothing is ever optimal, but being as optimal as possible, in the pursuit of this. But if your personality traits are not aligned with doing what's optimal, you just want to do what you want to do because you enjoy doing it, then cool. Like if that's the way you like to approach your bodybuilding, then keep in mind that you can still do that. It's just we like to approach it, I suppose.
I think that's what makes bodybuilding fun as well. The fact that you can be creative with it. Do you know what I mean? That's what I like.
You'll speak to a dude that got on stage in 12 weeks and he may look good. Could he have looked better? That's what my mind always will go to. What could he have done to be better? And I always think that, I always go back to that. But if he had a fucking blast getting on stage in 12 weeks and he could only adhere to a 12-week prep, and that's just his personality, then that's what you've got to work with, like Patrick, for example, with the Black Terminator, if we ran a prep with him that was 24 weeks long, yeah, he may have been better and he may have been a lot better at the end and maybe he would have won a pro card. But is he someone that can actually adhere to a prep of that length? Probably not. So he probably needs to go hard for 12 weeks because that's all he can adhere to. So again, it depends on the personality, depends on the individual as well.
Half the fun is experimenting as well. I
So,
reckon that's what I like about it. Anyway, anywho, next week or the week after, we will be back. Dave, thank you for coming on.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in person, Dave. So we can.
that's it.
Oh, it's very hard.
Yeah, you
Depends what day he has COVID. You
You
got no license now too.
Let's put that on Zoom.
Don't
Sorry.
drive, bro.
He has no
Don't
license.
drive.
Yeah. I'm gonna
Um,
run there.
no, you catches public transport. So sorry. Are you coming in this week?
Well, fucking not now, am I? After this verbal attack, yeah, I'll be it for sure.
All right.
I'm in Mondays and Thursdays, Dave. So come in one of those 2 days.
Yeah, come in one of those
That's
days
it,
and
bud.
we'll catch up. All right, for all the listeners, we are tuning out. So catch you later, guys. Thanks a lot for watching and listening. If you stay all the way to the end, we love you. Bye-bye.
How long?
Thanks, Evan.
How long?